everybody, welcome to my channel. In this video I want to talk to you about online interviews. In my past video I talked about how to prepare for regular in-person interviews, and in this video I thought I would talk about online interviews because this year it's a very popular trend, as you can imagine, and many schools chose to conduct their interviews online. I do not know how long it's gonna last, but I honestly think that this is gonna continue because we have proved with this pandemic that a lot of things can be done online, and dental school interviews is one of those things. But on a good side, I think some schools also still conducted in-person interviews, so we're coming back to normal. It's okay. We're not gonna live like this forever. But anyway, I thought it would make sense to talk about preparation and difference of online interview because I went through both. In Oklahoma, I went to my interview in person because it happened in October 2019, before everything happened, and my BU interview was online because it happened in May. So you can understand it had to happen through Zoom. So I want to talk about general differences, what's different aside of obvious things that you're not there during online interview. And the main difference, it's much less personal. It's much harder to stand out through the screen because the interviewer doesn't see you. He doesn't see how you walk, how you smell, how you talk. I know it sounds weird and kind of creepy, but still it's very important. You know how, if you have been to any interviews before, you know how you all sit in the same room and then an interviewer comes up, picks you up, and you all walk together to their office. And when you walk, there's always a small talk, there's always something like, hello, how are you? Some joke can come up, and it also builds the personal connection, sort of. It's the first impression before you actually meet through the screen. When you just join in Zoom, you don't have that. You don't have this kind of little spark, this little a second or two time spent with the interviewer without talking about just, you know, the interview stuff. So that is a big minus. It hurt me during my interview, during an online interview. I noticed that because when you tune in, you have to start immediately because you're just another person on a conveyor. They have to conduct these interviews online all the time. There's no difference. No people are perceived differently. It's just a picture on the screen. And I definitely felt that way. Another big problem with online interviews is that you cannot see the facilities of the schools you're applying to. And it's important for you. It's not just important for them that they can't pick you, comprehensively judge you by your online interview, but also you can't comprehensively judge the school. So when you go to a school, you can actually get a feel of the campus. You can find out where exactly in the city, if you are not living in that city, where the school is located. If you like the facilities, the equipment the school has, you can't see it. The positive thing about it is that you can actually ask the interviewer about this. I talked in my previous video that it's really hard to come up with the questions to ask the interviewer after your interview, and this would be a good one because this would actually help you because you don't see the facilities, and it would show that you're actually interested, that you actually care what you're studying on, the equipment, the feel of the campus. It can bring up some questions that normally during the interview would be stupid to ask because you see them in person. So that kind of is a positive side, but another negative side, it's kind of a seesaw. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But another negative side, it actually will make you spend more time researching the school because you have to know what to ask. Like if you see something on campus, like, oh, how about that fountain? Do you guys study there? You can come up with that question when you're in person, when you actually see where you are. When you are online, you actually have to research everything about the school. Not that you normally don't have to, but this time it's actually much more important because this information, because you can't get the feel of the school. It's more for yourself. To find out if you actually want to go to that school, you have to spend much more time researching. Now I want to talk about how to actually prepare for these interviews, and aside of the obvious things like the dress code, you still have to be very professional. The quiet, the lighting, the internet, that is all obvious. But let me talk about some things that I think could be tweaked here. So I talked about dress code in my previous video. I think it's very important to dress as professionally as you can, not wear any bright colors. During an online interview, I actually think you can be a little more liberal with that. So because it's just a screen, because the professor doesn't see you, you could actually wear something brighter to stand out on the screen. It doesn't have to be bright pink fuchsia dress, but some color, like maybe some blues, some greens, some yellows, that would actually help just to put you in a nicer picture. Because just imagine when you look at so many screens of the same person basically dressed in the same suit, talking about the same things, you want to stand out at least somehow. And in this case, and only this case, dressing a little more liberally would probably help you. And this is only for girls. For boys, please don't wear a pink suit. Just wear the suit. Don't think about it. That's just for the ladies. And another thing that I think could actually be really helpful is background noises. You know how you try to make your kids be so quiet when you're on an interview, or you're on a call or something, make your dog just go away and go into another room? I think it actually could start a conversation. If they can hear kids in the background screaming and playing, you can be, and the chances are the interviewer also has kids, and you can kind of, you know, find some common ground on that. Like, oh, you know how hard it is to deal with kids. Sure, I know how hard it is to deal with kids, and they could start a conversation. Or if you can hear a dog barking, and the interviewer could, chances are he could be a huge dog lover, and that could start a conversation too. So don't try to completely sterilize your space. It's okay to have some background noises. It's understandable, and I think it actually could serve you good in this online interview process. Another thing that is probably obvious to most people, but some maybe not as obvious, I don't know, but lighting. I think that lighting during the online interview is very important, because again, when a person looks on the screen, his perception of this screen, of this picture, is everything, because there's nothing else you can do. So lighting has to be impeccable. I would actually like invest in a light or something, in a ring light, because when you can't see half of a person's face, or it's really dark in the room, even though if it's all clean and everything, you basically cut your chances in half, you know, because even though the person could like your personality and like what you're saying, it's just something subconscious when you don't like, you know, when you watch for a video online or a movie and it's just a terrible quality, you kind of, even if you love the movie, you kind of always itchy, scratchy feeling in the back of your mind. So this is the same thing with the online interviews. You really want to adjust your lighting so you would be as clear as possible. And it's an easy thing to look through, because we all have the same computers, we all have the same cameras on them, but light can actually adjust the perception of a person of you. So I would really just kind of practice your setting before the interview. See how you look in different lights. Maybe move location from location, sit in front of a window, see how your lights look in your camera, and that can be adjusted. You can kind of see yourself. If you sit in a dark, gloomy room in a dark, gloomy weather, of course you kind of get the feeling of like, oh, this is boring, I don't want to watch that. So that is something I think is very important. Also, another advantage of the Zoom, as I just mentioned, you can practice. You can see yourself when you speak, and you can see yourself how you are, because there's always a little picture of you, of your camera and screen, and you can see how you are perceived by the person who you're talking to. Like right now, I'm looking at my own picture in the camera. I can see how I look when I speak. The same thing can be done with Zoom, and that actually gives you an edge during practice, because you can't see yourself when you're just during the interview. You don't know how you look when you speak during an in-person interview, but here you can actually see yourself in that picture, and if you sound too crazy or if you sound too boring, you can actually adjust yourself as you go, because you see yourself. So I think it's very helpful also for the preparation standpoint, because you can just Skype someone and just talk, watch yourself speak, and you can practice with that. You can train yourself to be better, and I think it's a really helpful tool, and you can always find some positives in the online interview, and this is one of them. And the last thing I want to mention about this is basically the rules are the same. You still have to stand out. If you want to know my opinion about preparation for regular interviews, you can go back and watch my video. I filmed a whole video about interview prep, but the same rules apply during an online interview. The only difference is, as I mentioned before, you can add to your questions about the facilities, about the feel of the school, and I would actually ask some personal questions like, what is your favorite thing about the campus? When I eventually visit your campus, what would be the place for me to go first to recommend? Because that is actually, you haven't done yet. It's for you to do in the future, so you can actually get advices from the interviewers, and that can start another conversation. And it would make much more sense to ask at this time, as I mentioned before. I wouldn't ask questions that, again, I mentioned in my previous video, that interviewer wouldn't know the answers, like exact model of your burrs and exact model of your dental units. That interviewer probably wouldn't know, so hold off on that. But you can just ask something personal, like your feel. When was the school renovated? How does it look now? Do you think it's up to standards. I don't know, probably wouldn't ask that, but you know, you can actually ask about things that you can't see and you normally would during an in-person interview, and that can also prolong your conversation. Don't even try to talk about when your school's gonna reopen, when are you gonna be 100% of capacity again, what are your standards for COVID protection, whatever, because it's such a daunting conversation. And usually actually by now schools know what they're doing and schools are reopening and they know their COVID protocols, but just don't ask that. It's such a daunting topic. It's on everyone's mind. You do not want to remind them about that. And asking how you're going to be in the future, nobody knows how they're going to be in the future. Just forget that topic. Do not talk about it during an online interview. Another thing you could probably talk about during online interviews is the fact that you're probably in different states. The chances are you are, or in a different country, and you can actually talk about the weather there. I know it's simple and everybody talks about the weather, but it actually makes sense when you're in different places and you're talking to each other long distance. It kind of makes sense, and whatever makes the conversation longer helps. Like, I was in Oklahoma when I conducted my interview in BU, and I talked about the terrible weather in Oklahoma and terrible weather in Boston. That one thing was in common. So we talked about things like that, and it starts a conversation like, oh my goodness, I've never been to Oklahoma, how is it there? Or I've never been to Michigan. Or you can, you know, wherever you are, you can always talk about something that's specific to your state, and it also something that, you know, makes sense to talk about. And that is everything I wanted to say about online interviews. I know it's probably not that much, but I honestly think that online interview, it's just an interview, is a place to put your best foot forward. So I wish you all the best of luck with your preparation for your interviews, or if you got in, which I know a lot of people are, big congratulations and good luck in dental school, and I hope you come back for my next video. Bye.